Let's start a little bit with the basic, even though we already touched it a bit, and that is what actually the switch from remote includes. So the thing is that office work in general dictates a fixed location, a fixed schedule, and a fixed cost of living. Frequently nosy location, especially if it's an open office or a packed office, which happens quite frequently. And the 40 minutes to an hour route that I said before, when you go from the countryside to the city, you basically do it twice a day instead of doing it whenever you need. Remote work allows you to do basically the direction is very opposite from that. It allows you to live wherever you want, and that can mean live in a place where you enjoy living, or maybe live because your significant other doesn't work remotely yet, and you have to move there as well. And I know many examples like that. Actually, like just last week, I had a call from a CTO that left a very successful big company just because his wife got an opportunity to study medicine in a different city and he couldn't continue working there anymore, which like the company lost a star manager that was working there for 6 years just because they couldn't be flexible enough to let him work remotely. Also, it allows you a flexible schedule, which means that like the way we handle it internally inside our company is that we have a semi-flexible schedule, which means basically we have core hours of the company from 9 a.m. till 5 p.m. CET. And then each employee has to be available or communicative at least for 4 hours out of those core hours. So 4 hours in a day, you have to be available towards the rest of your coworkers. The rest of the time you can work whenever you want. So it's kind of a balance between synchronous communication and asynchronous communication. As I said, travel is not required, but definitely possible. And you can choose your own environment. So, do you still see my screen when I do like that?
Yes, we do.
You do, awesome, because then I can open my notes. Yeah, so one of the big things that you kind of lose when you switch to a remote office, and that is kind of what I call the almighty water cooler. Those random small communications that happen in the kitchen when you eat lunch or when you go to get a coffee or things like that, that you talk to other coworkers inside your organization, that there's a good chance you wouldn't talk to otherwise. And one of the problems that we saw appear because of that early on is that different departments, different teams inside the company didn't have such transparent communication. For example, I saw a case when the customer support team and the marketing team were both working on a knowledge base for the product, while not knowing both of them are working on that. And after a while, we implemented kind of a random pairing of employees. We use a bot called Donut, which once a week pairs random people from the company to talk, which are not necessarily even reporting to each other or communicating to each other. And that got the whole company a little bit closer and a little bit more connected. So basically what happens in a physical office in many cases is that a lot of random communications between the employees and between different members of the organization happen by themselves, which in a remote company did not. So we had to facilitate kind of communication between other different parts of the company. It manifests itself in various ways, like I said, with the donut pairings, but also when you do a meeting, when you do like a physical meeting in a company, usually you're encouraged to stay on focus and focus on the agenda, like limit the time a few minutes before the end of the meeting and so on. But if you adhere strictly to that in a remote company, what will actually happen is that people won't know each other, because other than those video calls, they don't have points of contact. So in a remote company, you actually do a little bit of the opposite. You spend maybe a few minutes at the beginning of the meeting while you encourage a little bit more of a communication between different members of the team. You know, like in the example before, asking what is that background that suddenly changed. Another thing which is very, very obvious in remote companies and less so in a physical one is the whole aspect of Netiquette, which is a connection of the words internet and etiquette. Right? When you talk in a physical company, when you meet somebody, you know, go to the cubicle, talk to them, and so on, it's very obvious what is the message you're trying to convey. By the way you talk, by your facial expression, by the way you communicate. But in a remote company, it's not obvious at all. And if the person who is trying to communicate is not expressing his meta message with other ways of like augmented with additional symbols, such as smileys, such as proper capitalization, it becomes very unclear what exactly is he trying to say. And in our case, there was a few cases when a person, one of the managers actually in the company, was sending messages, for example, in all caps without thinking what does it mean, or sending a message which for him would be a joke, but he didn't put a smiley in the end. And that caused many of the employees to actually to misinterpret his messages and become very lost in what he was saying. So for example, he would send a message for something which wasn't urgent, but he would send it in all caps. So people would start working on that in the middle of the night because they thought it's urgent, but it wasn't. Or they would get extremely offended by a joke he would say, even though it was from his point of view a joke, but he just didn't put a smile in the end. So they would understand it as something very serious. So that's something definitely to pay a lot of attention to. Now, another thing is being very clear in your intentions, clear in the way that you communicate. And many times in the text, your message gets lost. So we had a few cases actually in our company where one of the managers and one of the designers would work on something while only communicating in text messages, maybe with a little bit of a delay. And it doesn't matter what exactly was said and so on, but the message was so misunderstood. I'll use that word, it's easier. So misunderstood that they got angry at each other to a point where they wouldn't even talk to each other and said, we don't want to work together again ever, and basically came to a fight. But they both came to me to complain about the other. And my response was very simple. I said, okay, jump on a call, clear the air, figure it out. And they were so angry at each other that they didn't even want to jump on a call. They were saying, no, I'm not talking to the other side. No, like she offended me so much. After a few, basically me begging them to jump on a call, they went on a call, and within 5 minutes, the whole situation was cleared. They were happy. They understood each other much better. They moved on. In a way, for me, the moral of that story was that written communication is very, very efficient in terms of async, passing messages and async in general, but you have so many different ways to communicate online and remotely today, outside of just Slack messages or emails. Use all of them. If something is not clear in one, escalate. Go to a voice call for a few minutes. Go to a video call. Maybe reschedule for a different day and think about it clearly. Never assume that the other side comes with kind of hostile intentions, because in the end of the day, you're all working the same company and you're all working towards the same goal. And another manifestation of a similar concept, but in a little bit of a different way, is respect for others' time, especially things like weekends and holidays, especially if you have parts of the company working in countries where the weekend is on different days. So part of our company works from Israel, well, the rest works from a lot of other places, and in Israel, the weekend is actually Friday and Saturday, while in the rest of the world, it's Saturday and Sunday. So in Israel, Sunday is a regular work day that people start working. It's like everybody around is focused on their work and so on. And we had quite a few problems at the beginning when managers that were located in Israel would start writing tasks on things on Slack to employees who were in other time zones or in other countries. And they, since it's a message from a manager, would interpret it as urgent work. But it wasn't. For the manager, it was just a regular work day, but he didn't think or didn't consider the time of the employee. Until we set up a set of rules in which if you're trying to communicate with somebody during the holidays or during weekend, don't send it on Slack. Don't send it as a message. Send an email that can be read when the employee is back at work. Try to either go fully async if you don't expect an answer now, or at least make sure that the other side is receptive. So if you're on Slack, see that the other person is online on Slack before sending him a message on, like, can you please do that now? Or at least send a message like, do you have a few minutes? Maybe we can chat quickly now. It's not necessarily mean that the other side doesn't want to communicate, just means that don't expect that to happen automatically, especially like on those kind of borderline cases. Well, generally, what we're talking about async communication, the rule of thumb should be never to assume that the person you're writing to is going to be able to reply and respond immediately. Because as we said before, with the flexible schedule, even if that other person is in the same time zone as you are and you kind of check that they're available during this time, it could be that they went out for a few hours because they finished the 4 hours for today, or something is happening now which is outside of work and it's tolerated by the workplace, but sometimes for employees, especially ones that come from a regular physical company, it can be very hard to understand that. So always put yourself kind of in the other person's shoes. Now, another thing that helped us a lot with improving communication, especially async communication, especially in between different cultures, was offsites. It was basically getting all the employees in one physical location. We do them once a year at the moment. I think it's better to do them twice a year. And I know it's a bit counterintuitive that I'm coming here and saying, oh, like remote work is so cool, let's put everybody in the same room. And it's kind of counterintuitive in a bit. But the result of that is that this week of working together in one place makes the rest of the time when you work remote substantially more efficient, because you know much better what to expect from the other person and how to communicate with that person. And maybe like once you see the personality, you start even online and even in messages communicating in a very different way. And it also helps with what we said before with kind of random communication between different team members. We had, in our company, we had a director in Malta. Like our company is incorporated in Malta, and we have a local director there who is managing basically the day-to-day operation of the company. And for 4 years, we didn't talk to this director. we except for emails and messages. And in emails and messages, the guy seemed like a very serious, very quiet guy until the first time when we met together for one evening. And my perception of the guy totally changed. Like I started, like the communication channels opened. And from that point on, it was much easier to know how to approach, in some way, even like where's the border of communication is, like how serious do you need to be, how maybe pushy you can be, and how to be open with the other side. So I know a few remote companies that some of the managers actually fly to each new employee's location. Like when a new employee starts after 2 months, one of the managers flies there for a week to get to know the person, and then they continue working remotely. I've done that a few times as well. I'm not doing it at the moment, but I definitely want to return doing it, at least maybe not immediately after 2 months, but every few months to meet in person. A few companies also are kind of giving a budget for different colleagues to go and visit each other, which I think is a very, very good thing, and helps keep the communication channel between employees open, even when they are not in the same place. So there's another thing that we kind of, for us, was a bit of a surprise, and caught us in surprise a few times, was all the different laws and rules about communication and connecting to company systems worldwide. So we have a few employees located in Russia, and one of our employees located in Crimea. And he's been working with us for a while. And one day I get a notification, like an email from Slack, that our account is being suspended and blocked because we had connections from disputed territories.
No way.
Yeah, we did. And after we looked, basically what happened is that employee was connecting through a VPN all this time, and then one time he forgot, and Slack decided to block us. So we needed to demand unblocking because of that one employee. But it's something that when you sit in one physical office, you don't even think about it. That kind of ties together with the whole, on one hand, the world kind of became much more global and much more connected. On the other hand, there's still all kind of those borders which became virtual that you're not really aware of. And yeah, there's a whole subject about how to handle vacation days and holidays and so on between different cultures. But I'd say this is outside of the scope of this talk. And that's it for me.